Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Respected Chair, Co-Chair, Venerable Mahasangha, Excellencies, dignitaries, and my dear friends. For last 2 days, including today, we have been discussing two very pertinent and important issues, as we know: the conflict avoidance and environmental issues. And we have come to know lots of things from the deliberations of scholarly representatives of different institutions, countries. I do not think I have much to say. But before I start talking something on this issue, let me put a question first. The question is, when we are talking about these two issues, the conflict and the environmental crisis, definitely, we want to avoid it. We want to avoid conflict, and we are ready, in fact, to avoid conflict, to work for avoidance of conflict, also to bring down the level of economic or the environmental crisis. But the question is, suppose if there are some people who are determined to create conflict, who are determined to cause environmental crisis, so what do we do? This is the question I just put to you all, because I don't have the answer. Now, the two concepts or two issues, conflict and environmental crisis, environment, that we are discussing now, these two issues are actually not the pleasant issues. The conflict, for example, it is something which we do not want. That's why we are talking about conflict avoidance. The environmental problem, which we know we do not want. So both the concepts, both the issues are the issues which we do not want. Now, who are the people actually, or who are the agencies causing this conflict, or causing these environmental issues, the problems? No one from extraterrestrial world coming and doing all these kind of problems for us on the earth. It's conflict. The conflict is among us. We, the human beings, are doing that. We are causing the conflict, either it is within the individual or among the individuals, among the groups, or whatever. And also, the environmental problems. Other than the human beings, can we think of any other living creatures, living beings on the earth who create the problems of environment that today we are discussing or talking about? Here, what I want to tell is, as we are discussing about the paradigm shift, the characteristics of the problem is not particular to Hindu or the Buddhist. The conflict, when there is a conflict affects not only the Buddhists or the Hindus, or the Christians or the Muslims, or the Americans or Africans or Asians or the Europeans. The conflict, wherever it arises or takes place, it affects everybody in that place, in that area, in that zone. So we have to transcend our vision of discussing these issues. The conflict, as its characteristic, is universal, in the sense it affects universally whoever is part of the conflict zone, a conflict event. So also the environmental problems, it affects not only particular person, a particular group, particular religion, it affects everyone. So why not we find out something, it is universal in approach, not necessarily the Buddhist approach or Buddhist paradigm or Hindu paradigm or somebody's paradigm. There has to be some universal approach. And here, I was just thinking about to talk about this concept that we find in the Buddha Dhamma. When I say Buddha Dhamma, actually I don't refer to Buddhism as such, because Buddha taught Dhamma and Vinaya. The Buddhism is later part. We add to Buddhism what Chinese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, Burmese Buddhism. So Dhamma, the Buddha taught, is universal. But the Buddhism is a sectarian, connected to particular country or traditions. So I am to talk about the Dhamma as Buddha taught. The main purpose of the teaching of the Buddha was to eradicate the suffering, the problems of humankind. And this conflict or environmental crisis also can be subsumed under the concept of dukkha that Buddha spoke about. Dukkha. Dukkha means suffering of any kind. The causes can be anything. So here I just thought of the concept of, if I am to say Buddhist paradigm, the Buddhist paradigm of three. One, the Four Noble Truths. Two, universal identity. Three, universal common interest. The paradigm of Four Noble Truths, it talks about if there is any problem, any difficulties, any conflict, first is diagnose the real nature of the problem or the crisis. Two, ascertain the actual causes corresponding to that problem or the crisis or dukkha. Then, having optimistic approach regarding solution to the problem or the crisis. Then finally, pragmatic or realistic ways to put the crisis to an end. So this is the first paradigm, that the paradigm of Four Noble Truths. Second is the universal identity. Universal identity means what? We the human beings, we are not actually originally Hindu or Buddhists or Christians or Muslims, Americans or Europeans, Asians, Africans, whatever. We say this is later part. Our identity, Dhamma, is the universal identity which talks about wherever there is defilement, pollutants, either within the individual or outside the individual, it will cause the suffering. Whoever is there, within, without. It's a law of nature. This is Dhamma. That's what Buddha talked about. And here, universal identity means, what by which that I want to mean is that gives the light. It doesn't have differentiation of your caste, creed, religion, or whatever. The light of the sun and moon dispels the darkness from the world and makes the world a place to live and to do things that we want. And the light of the Buddha, it dispels ignorance, so that we know the truth, what causes what. Actually, we are talking about the issues of conflicts and environmental crisis. How many of us are ready actually to not contribute to this crisis? And we all of us talk about the good things we are thinking, we are talking, but how many of us are ready really to act? To act so that conflict doesn't arise. I can find conflict. Conflict of what magnitude? I do not know what is in our mind when we are discussing about the conflict in the conference here. conflict of what kind? What kind of conflicts actually? Conflict, there may be different kind of conflicts. Conflict of interest, conflict of ideology, belief systems, identity, existence, acquisition, possessions, then ego, lots of conflicts may be there. And environmental issues that I'm supposed to discuss today here cannot be done without a reference to conflict. Because you see, when we are talking about the environmental crisis, how it is happening? How it's coming into existence? Definitely there is a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. There's some people, they want to have more profit, so more exploitation of the natural resources. And some people, they want, our life or the earth should be preserved or conserved, so there should be less exploitation of the natural resources. So we find there is a conflict, right? So if we are to either avoid conflict or preserve the natural resources or conserve the environment, as we cannot agree at the different platforms of, say, our religious tenets, the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Muslims, or many other institutions. But at least I think one thing we can agree, the universal common interest, that is, we do not want pain. As I don't want pain, so also no animal, no creature wants pain. Everybody wants peace and happiness. So why not we agree on this principle? Whether you are Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, whatever you call that, we have a universal principle that nobody wants pain, everybody wants peace. So let's do that thing only, which will promote the common interest of avoidance of pain and enhancement of peace. So we should have this principle, so we can all agree. If not, we can agree on the theological or ideological principles. So, and here at last, I would like to say this the very important concept, these two concepts, conflict avoidance and environmental crisis to be resolved. These two issues we are discussing here, and who will hear us? Who will hear us? And I feel this should be a movement in education and in other places. It should be a movement, and that's why I thought, what should be our slogans that we all should go out telling everyone: avoid conflicts, avoid wars, avoid destructions. We want a world which is pollution-free, clean and green. Let's live and let others to live, whether human or non-human. We all feel pain, do not cause pain. We all want peace, real world peace, for you, for me, and for everyone. Let's awake and let's save our Mother Earth. And we have to shout actually till everybody hears, mainly the decision makers. So I was saying, the thinking, shout and shout and shout until everybody wakes up and hears your voice. It has to be heard. Shout and shout and shout until everybody opens eyes and sees the world in danger. Shout and shout and shout until everybody comes and acts to protect our Mother Earth and ourselves, the human community. Thank you so much.